India's greatest man of letters, the soul of Bengal, and ambassador of friendship between East and the West. Welcome to this lecture on Rabindranath Tagore and his short story, The Postmaster. Rabindranath Tagore was the younger son of Debendranath Tagore, a leader of Brahma Samaj. He was born in Calcutta, British India in 1861. Tagore was mostly homeschooled, and although at the age of 17 he was sent to England for formal schooling, he did not finish his studies there. In his mature years, in addition to his many-sided literary activities, Tagore managed to manage his family estates as well. Because of his enormous contribution to the field of literature and because of his participation in India's freedom struggle, supporting India's freedom struggle, and also because of his tremendous insights, literary, political, and intellectual insights, because of all these reasons, Rabindranath Tagore was considered as a renowned Bengali writer and also a stalwart of Bengali Renaissance. He was best known for his 1910 collection of poems entitled Gitanjali, which means song offering. So many of us are really familiar with this book, Gitanjali, because it is the first time that ever an Eastern writer, an Indian writer, winning a Nobel Prize for Literature, and that was Rabindranath Tagore in the year of 1913, winning Nobel Prize for Literature for his book Gitanjali. Although Tagore prioritized poetry, the genre of poetry, over all other different genres that he had ever tried, he also made notable contributions into different other fields as a dramatist, novelist, short story writer, and of course, non-fictional prose as well. He has started an experimental school which came to be known as Shanti Niketan, and now it is a university also. And it is at Shanti Niketan where Tagore initially started trying out or applying his Upanishadic ideals of education. So he participated in Indian nationalist movement, though in his own non-sentimental and visionary way. And Gandhi, the political father of modern India, was his devoted friend. So, and many influences were there. Among many other influences, Tagore literally acknowledged his three main sources of literary inspiration, which include the Vaishnava poets of the medieval Bengal, Bengali folk literature, the classical Indian aesthetic, cultural, and philosophical heritage, and definitely the modern European literary tradition, particularly the work of the English Romantic poets. For the world, for the entire world, he became a global icon for India. He became the voice of India's spiritual heritage, and for India, especially for Bengal, he became a great living institution and a great living inspiration also. He died on August 7th, 1947. So now moving on to discussing our story, The Postmaster. Tagore wrote The Postmaster during the rule of British Crown in India known as the British Raj, which spans between 1858 to 1947. Britain's system of imperialism did not extend to the entire subcontinent, portions of which continue to self govern, but the government's influence in Indian life created so much chaos, segregation, violent rebellion. People started to revolt against all these when the Britons, the colonial administrators, lived alongside their marginalized subjects. And famine, high taxation, massive debts, all these things together, it had kind of crippled the Indian economy. The postmaster involves an Indian man who works for the British government as a postmaster. And it is strongly implied that the poverty stricken Bengal town in which he is stationed, where there's this one place, Ulapur, where this postmaster is being stationed or he's been assigned this place as the post of this postmaster, and this place was also like completely being affected by the imperialist policy. Years after Tagore wrote The Postmaster, the British Raj began to unravel. Beginning in the 1940s, the nationalist resistance, spearheaded by Mahatma Gandhi, and severe economic challenges contributed to the gradual defeat of British rule. So, this is something that we can account to the India's freedom struggle in the history of Indian independence at the same time, because as a backdrop of the story, it talks about how the British imperialist policies had kind of like affected on Indian economy, and for the basic Indian common man, how it was affected. So that is basically the story is about. And there is something like a movie adaptation has also came in 2016, a Bengali movie, which is titled as Postmaster. It is based on the story The Postmaster by Tagore. It had like a several few significant changes in this adaptation. The girl Ratan and the postmaster marry secretly, defying the wishes of the postmaster's conservative father. So that is a clear demarcation from what the story is trying to portray. Because here in our story, the postmaster is an adult, and the Ratan, the small girl, she is actually 12 or 13 years old only. So the relationship between the postmaster and Ratan in the story is like it is completely different from what is portrayed in the movie, 2016 movie, where it had kind of taken a romantic adaptation. And we can also say that it is actually like a writing from real life. Tagore wrote this story while working as a landlord in Sajadpur, Bengal, where he managed his family's estates. In Sajadpur, Tagore was acquainted with a local postmaster in the area, though it is not entirely clear whether this real postmaster's experience influenced Tagore's story. It is not really clear. So Tagore also lived above a post office which took up the first floor of his family home. So we can clearly say that this story it got its inspiration from his real life experience, but at the same time, it might not be about a person who had gone through all these experiences. Okay. So, what is the story here? So, let's see what the summary is all about. Like, I'll just go through a brief summary of the story, which you have to read thoroughly, extensively, so that you will get to know the minute details of the story. So, let's see, like, generally, like, briefly summarize what the story is all about. For his first job, the postmaster is assigned to work in the village of Ulapur, a quiet backwater with an indigo factory there. The postmaster, he feels sorely out of place in the village, being feeling both too sophisticated as a Calcutta man amongst uneducated villagers and needlessly arrogant to the very people who he might turn to hoping for friendship. So basically, like we can call like the story itself, Tagore calls the postmaster as a fish out of water, because this person, the postmaster, had just come to this place, Ulapur, the village of Ulapur, from Calcutta, the busy city, the noisy city where everything is so much happening. It's a happening city. But Ulapur is very quiet. Their common people are going on around their everyday lives trying to make both ends meet. But here our postmaster is feeling like a fish out of water, because he doesn't feel kind of like adjusted, he cannot accommodate the entire village life into the memory of his busy Calcutta life. For lack of anything better to do, the postmaster takes to writing poetry about his scenic surroundings, pontificating on rain-soaked leaves and the like as a way to express his deepest sorrow. So poetry became a kind of a like a vocation for postmaster, because it is not much of a happening place, and because of that very reason, the post office is kind of like a dry place for. It feels like a dry place for postmaster, since he doesn't make much money. The postmaster cooks for himself and enlists a young orphan girl named Ratan to help him with housework in exchange of some food. And there is this girl who he had enlisted, like as I say just now, Ratan, who is actually some 12 or 13 or 14 years old, maybe. So this girl is there to help this postmaster. And here also we can clearly say the theme of gender inequality, class system, which is basically in India, as we say, caste system, because there is this idea about this young female helping out this elite class man who had just come to this place from the busy city. And this notion of the caste system, and she has to take care of him throughout the story. We can see Ratan as a kind of a female character who is not just a small girl, who she kind of like acquires a role of, or she plays a role of mother, wife, sister, daughter, everything encompassed into like combined into one small girl. So this is how Ratan is being portrayed in the story by Tagore, and Tagore subtly points out the caste system in India that is pretty much prevalent during that time. And this person, this Ratan, is kind of like hired as a help to the postmaster, but at the same time, she is not given any salary. Only a portion of his food is given as a sort of salary. We cannot even call it as a salary. That is what Ratan gains every day. One night, while Ratan is preparing his hookah, the postmaster asked her to describe her family, and they started to talk between each other. Both of them shared details about about their family, and the postmaster also talks about his mother and sister back in Calcutta. And this conversation, this in-depth conversation, kind of like developed to such an extent that both of them feels sort of like close to each other, and both of them started to consider each other's family as their own. So that is a level of friendship and companionship that they started to uh, develop. And there was this incident where the postmaster is kind of starting to feel like the need for a female companion, because he saw a bird watching in a tree, and this view of this beautiful view, he suddenly feels like, okay, this beautiful sight, I want to share this view, I want to see this with someone else. And this lack of a companion, not just male or female, we cannot even like kind of categorize it, but this lack of companionship kind of became a driving reason for the postmaster to train Ratan to read and write. So that is also kind of a like a time pass for postmaster, because there isn't much to do in that post office. And these lessons, this reading and writing lessons, continue till the time when the postmaster falls ill, and he became sort of ill in such a way that he became so weak that Ratan had to nurse him back to proper health. And but even then, Ratan is portrayed as a person who stick on to the duties as well as to the lessons, because she continued to learn by her own. And the postmaster decided that this is not the right place for me, and thus he applied for a transfer, which got denied by the superiors. And being frustrated out of this reason, he quits his job to return home, and he tells Ratan that, okay, this is what's going to happen, I'm going to leave this place, okay. And Ratan is kind of like shattered by this news, and she wants him to take her along with him to Calcutta, but he is not in a position to do that. And he promises that, like a vague promise, he promises that maybe definitely the next postmaster will definitely take care of you. And it is not something that will comfort Ratan. And upon leaving, the postmaster tries to give her some money, but she refuses. This is not something about money. She really enjoyed the company and the companionship of postmaster as well. She gained so much also. She started learning. She is now able to read, to write. So this is all because of postmaster. And Ratan also, maybe she might also feel that um, maybe this is her chance to like save herself from this small town, small village life. Maybe she can also acquire something, maybe she can also get a job one day. So that all these things, all her dreams suddenly shattered with a decision taken by postmaster. As he was leaving, he is struck by a feeling that maybe he should go back and take Ratan. But uh, the story ends at a very uh, kind of problematic point where it is revealed that life is full of separations and endings. But basically, what is the point? Someone has to have the courage, to gain the courage that everything has to, that, like, this too shall pass, and I have to make things work in my own way. Ratan doesn't have the same view. She's actually hoping that maybe one day Postmaster will return to take her along with him to Calcutta. But this definitely, that seems not to happen anytime soon or anytime ever. But even then, Ratan stick on to their to her hope of Postmaster's return. So that is how the story ends. And the themes of the story include sense of belonging and separation, companionship, urban and rural life. There is a clear demarcation that is shown in the story. Melancholy and the sublime natural world, the scenic beauty of this place, gender, class, inequality. I already said that. So the postmaster feels loneliness when he got separated from his busy life in Calcutta, and he found a sense of belonging in Ullaipur when he got the company of Ratan. And so there is this intricacies of human relationship, or the need for a companionship that is which is very much human, and that is being deeply detailed in the story. And initially, the postmaster, it seems like very simple parable like story imbued with lyricism, and there is this reflection of natural world, and there is this gender and class difference between the main characters. Only two characters are there, Postmaster and Ratan, and even then they are like clearly at different points in their life, because both of them belong to two different castes. So Ratan is subservient to patriarchy and ultimately marginalized, deprived of any education or financial support, while the Postmaster is educated and he has got financial means, he has got a job to support him. All these factors kind of like give him an added benefit to freely move around. He can take a decision as he want and seek a better life in Calcutta. So that is up to him, because it clearly shows the inequality of classes in society. And the story also derives much of its emotional depth from the lush, elaborate depictions of the natural world, the scenic beauty of Lapur, which becomes a source of both melancholy and artistic inspiration. In the beginning, it was something that is sort of solitude and misery for the postmaster. Suddenly, when he started writing poetry on that, it became a source of inspiration for the artist in him. Okay, and also there is this fractured image of India, which is depicted in the story, that is suggesting that to the upper class educated elites like postmaster, urbanity is preferable. Urban life is something that is required of people like postmaster, because they cannot kind of like completely comfort themselves to the by the rural life, where natural world kind of preoccupies its presence, and the life is somewhat dry, it's not noisy, it's very pretty much quiet out there. And there is this division between two different, completely different worlds that is beautifully pictured in the story. And this difference between this urban and rural life, it is not something that is reconciled, or it is that divide which cannot be bridged. But that is what that very reason is that what makes both rural life and urban life specific, unique, and beautiful. So all these things are certainly being conveyed through the story. So these are the important points in the story. And when we analyze the characters, we have only two characters, that are the postmaster and Ratan. Postmaster, his real name is not mentioned in the story, and he is a young Indian man from Calcutta, employed as a postmaster in Ullaipur, which is a rural Bengal village. And he does show kindness to Ratan, but at the same time, towards the end of the story, we can see the kindlessness of postmaster to a certain extent. But even then, he has his own views and reasons to do that, right? So Ratan is described as a 12 or 13-year-old orphaned village girl who helps the postmaster with housework and everything in return for a meal. and she is definitely lower class. She lacks a family, no financial support, anything. And she cannot kind of like, she's being confined to the village life of Ullapoor, where Postmaster acquires, or Postmaster enjoys that privilege to go out and seek another job and settle somewhere else, not just in Ullapoor. He has got his options very clearly mapped out. But whereas Ratan is kind of confined there in Ullapoor, with her hope that maybe one day Postmaster will definitely return. So these are the two characters. You can like detail about these characters by taking cards from the story as well. So read the story, and I hope this lecture helps you in understanding this story a little bit more. And do read the story and think over all the themes and characters that we have discussed here. Thank you.